We have so much law on the books that you can find a way to make just about anything illegal.
One of the big stories is sort of the cover up of Biden's cognitive health. But one way that it's sort of legally potentially having ramifications is allegedly there's going to be investigations into this Autopen. And it sounds to me like it's something like this. Even though the president does have the ability, basically almost unfettered, I think, according to the Constitution, to issue pardons, that power lies solely with him. And so, therefore, if he wasn't the person that was actually doing this, then I don't know if that's a crime for someone else to use that auto pen, or if it's just that those pardons would be null and void. What do you think about this story? Is there any potential legal ramifications there, or is it just a political matter?
I think it's really a political matter, and I'll tell you why. It's not that the theory has no merit. If like any legal document, if you can prove that the person who signed it had no idea they didn't know what day of the week it was, they thought they were an astronaut, they're seeing colors. Yeah, they're non-compos mentis. They don't have the power to execute the document, and that could have a range of legal ramifications. And given what we know about Biden, there should be inquiries, there should be investigations, there should be Senate hearings. But the reason it'll never come to anything is executive privilege. You're going to call people up and they're going to say, could Joe Biden remember your name? Did he know what document he was signing? And they're going to say executive privilege. I can't tell you that information. And honestly, it should be privileged. The Trump administration should say it's privileged. Like, I don't think anybody really wants to live in a world where you can open the door and force people to give insider information about how they were advising the president. So probably this turns into a political show, but it's going to be a very good political show, and one that I think is worth doing because, I mean, quite frankly, if the president was actually mentally incapacitated, which we don't know, but it's not outside the realm of possibility, that is an enormous scandal. That's bordering on a coup. It's a huge deal.
Yeah, I agree with you totally on this. I thought that for me, what it would come down to, just quite simply as a layman, would be this. The only way that this would be a legal matter would be if, like, Joe Biden had no clue. He was either such a vegetable or he had no clue that this was done. The problem is they could just ask Biden. And although I do think that he's mentally diminished, he certainly has moments of clarity where he would be able to say, yeah, I was okay with that. And to me, that's the end of the scandal, because I don't think that there should be a forcing of like, well, who advised you when and how did you make this decision? To me, I think the pardon power is pretty absolute for a reason. And I think that it's risky to sort of, because once you cross that line, well, if Trump issues pardons, right, there's going to be people that say, well, we don't think he was competent. We want to get to the bottom of his last days in office. Exactly what was he talking about? We're going to subpoena records. So, yeah, for me, unless Joe Biden would come out and say, yeah, I too wondered why those pardons happened. If that happened, then I think obviously you're talking a different matter. But I obviously don't see that coming. So I think you're right, though. It does weigh in. The reason they're framing this legally, I think they know they won't win these challenges, but it becomes a political scandal, which gets into the legitimate political story, which is the cover up that we saw from almost all areas inside the Biden administration. Is there any like legal ramifications just on that note? Like, if it turns out that there are people that knew that he wasn't competent enough to carry out his duties and they failed to inform, Congress or other people, is there anything that's like possible legal matters there?
Yeah, potentially, yes. They're not exactly like slam dunk cases, but the law, one of the crazy things about our country where it stands right now is we have so much law on the books that you can find a way to make just about anything illegal. Like, I was looking at this today, and we have laws that make it so that federal employees, not elected officials, but federal employees can't use government resources for partisan purposes. So if you find out that one person who wasn't a political appointee, but was actually a federal employee, came out and said, no, he's fit as a fiddle, right? That's technically a Hatch Act violation. Okay. Or if you find, one person who filled out medical paperwork or like a kid's medical history on some kind of like insurance document and they signed their name, but they lied because they left out all this stuff about Joe. that could be an issue. But I tell you what, I would love to have happen, because these are kind of tic-tacky charges.
Sure.
Let's be honest. What I would love to have happen, and I think it would make Trump look good historically, is he calls an end to the season of political prosecution. You have the investigations, you dirty some people up, you have the show, and at the end, he just pardons everybody. And then it's on them. You can reject a pardon, but if you reject a pardon, now who's the one who's really playing politics?
Mm-hmm.
And if he pulls that move and says, okay, like I think you guys did wrong, but I'm willing to move on if you are, that I think would actually maybe move us out of this era of political prosecutions, which I don't know about you, but I think it ends in tears. I don't think this is a good look long term. We've got to stabilize the ship, because if you do it, yeah, they prosecuted him. There's going to be some retaliation, but if it keeps going on vendetta style, the damage it'll do is exponential.
See, I completely disagree with you. I think that the prosecutions that they've set is not near enough. They need to do it to every single person, even the smallest crime, because here's what will happen. If they went through with that strategy, you said they'd say, thank you so much. Now we're throwing you and your entire family in jail when we're in office. They're going to do it anyways. They've already proved it. They're not going to go, wow, what a gracious guy. You pardoned us. We'll do you the same courtesy. Not happening. It is not going to happen. The only chance that there is that this stops is if there's a mutually assured destruction. And then from outside, Congress or some other body says, listen, we have to do something, pass some sort of legislation. But if Trump as the executive basically pardons people that his DOJ should, I'm not asking for them to investigate things that aren't crimes, but even the littlest crime, we'll get into this. We didn't talk about it beforehand, but like Letitia James, should she not face the same consequences that she employed to Trump? I mean, she basically did the exact same thing. She filled out false paperwork on a mortgage application. So now that the precedent's been set, I say go for it. I don't think that any of it will change until, especially, not necessarily the politicians, but especially the people that were involved in law enforcement or in the legal field prosecuting. They went after Trump's attorneys. They tried to get them disbarred. All of those tools and more need to be directed at them, or I don't think that it'll ever change.
See, I think that the real danger of the escalating prosecution game, and maybe we need some medicine for people to learn what's happening, is that there's so much law, because we only write new laws. We never get rid of the old laws, right? So the odds are pretty good that both of us committed 3 federal crimes today. I don't know what they are, right? But probably we did. And when you have just this glut of laws, you give unlimited discretion to prosecutors, because they can always find something if they really want, if they're truly motivated to. And that's a very dangerous place to be, because it does make the law look like a game, like it's not really a thing to be taken seriously. And quite frankly, if we get into this tit for tat arms race, eventually people are just going to start pulling the power move, like the president just pardons himself and everyone in his administration on the last day of his in office.
That's what Biden did.
Yeah, right. Well, no, but that might just have to be what happens going forward. Because we're like, okay, well, it's been fun, gang. I'm out. We're all pardoned now, and it's a bad look. I think it cheapens the system. I take your point as saying the only way out is through, which I'm not sure I agree with. But I think either way, we've got to look for a way out, because I don't know where it ends otherwise.
I agree, but what I want to see is an equal application of the law, and I would like to see that we go back to a time where. It's difficult to say this, right? Because I understand that people listening are like, well, equal application of the law means that if I jaywalk, that's the same as the president jaywalking. And if I can be charged, he should be, right? And I get it, but it's obviously not like that. When you break the glass on we're going to allow one administration to prosecute the previous administration, that's very dangerous. I remember being younger when, the thing I learned about Gerald Ford was, well, he pardoned Nixon.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that was how magnanimous that was. And I was like, as a young person, I was like, well, that sucks. If Nixon committed crime, screw him. Why does he deserve to get away with it? I wouldn't get a pardon if I did that stuff. Why should Nixon? But as you get older, you understand it. You're like, oh, because the political ramifications, if we give this executive the power to go after all of their political opponents in the same way that theoretically you go after a regular person. The problem is the incentive will be much higher to go after the political opponents. But my answer to all of that is, but it's already the status quo. There is zero chance, and I could prove it. There is zero chance that the Democrats are going to pull back the reins if all of a sudden Trump doesn't go after them. You want to know how I know that? Because look at every Tom, Dick, and Harry attorney or judge right now that's filing restraining orders about everything that they can about Trump's administration. Those same lawyers will be gung-ho if they have a favorable DOJ, or rather, lawyers like them will be gung-ho to go after Trump or anyone that they see as a threat to the establishment power structure. They're going to go after them no matter what. They're not going to stop because it's like, wow, that was really magnanimous of Trump to say, you know what, we're going to stop all these prosecutions. So I say, make the American people understand how corrupt this is and the standard that's been set. And the only way that that is possible is to treat them in the exact same manner by the exact same standard that they treated us. I think, in fact, I'll go a step further. Based on the logic of many attorneys that I've talked to on the left or people like Destiny, their definition of insurrection was broad enough that technically what those Democrats did in that ICE facility was an insurrection. The Democrats said that that means if you're an elected official and you engage in an insurrection, you can't be on the ballot. She should be removed from office. All of the people that support her have engaged in an insurrection. They should be removed from office. Make them choke on the very standard that they set forth.
A few points, because you covered some ground in order.
I know, I'm sorry.
I'll do the best I can. You did a slight conflation there, and I think it's actually a really great example. When somebody goes to court and says, "Judge, stop the Trump administration from doing X," they're suing the official capacity. They're suing the Secretary of State. They're suing the Trump administration. They're suing a public official, and they're saying, Judge, this public official shouldn't do this. Please stop them. That's always been within the rules. That's within fair play. What's not within fair play is going after the man and saying, no, you go to jail. You have to forfeit your assets. You lose your business. And that was the thing about the Nixon pardon that was so forward looking, which is that, like, did Nixon do wrong? Absolutely. But if you prosecute him, you unleash this hellstorm of democracy destroying legal scrum. And quite frankly, I mean, if you're a Democratic operative, you've got to think, if Joe Biden had just pardoned Trump, they had a much better chance in that election, right? Like, I mean, this was disastrous for them electorally. It's disastrous for the country.
Don't you think they knew that? If they'd have pardoned, it would have helped?
No, I think they have a nasty case of hubris with Trump. And this is the reason I say that.